No, they shouldn't be able to hear us when yeah, we're live, so that's good. But in terms of topics, obviously, the World Test Championship, the Sri Lanka squad being announced, and then we've got the big quiz, big pressure, Prasen. You have to win today. All right, if you're ready, we've already got 2 thumbs up. I don't know who from, but they're all welcome. So let's go. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the Desi Sportscast. And after a 2-week break, we're back. They say a week in politics is a long time, but 2 weeks is even longer in Indian cricket. It's like an eternity, so lots to talk about. And as you can probably see, we've got a few new things that we're trialing today to hopefully make the viewing better and listening better, and we can get more interaction. So we're making an effort. And I can only make an effort if I have fantastic people on the show. And as you know, on the cricket show, we have the best. And who can I, the man whose name is on the door, and he allows us to come in every week and join him on the show. Prasen, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
Hi Bharat, I'm doing well. It's been a long time for sure. 2 weeks without talking cricket. It's been hard, but thanks again for having me and good to be here.
No, it's fantastic to have you. And of course, we've got Shashwat with us. And Shashwat, welcome to the show. How are you, my friend?
Hi, I'm doing fine. How have you been?
Yeah, really good. I've had a couple of weekends away, which was the first time in over a year. I don't want to say anything about my break because I know you guys are still in the midst of a lockdown in both your states, and so I don't want to say any more because yeah, I had a fantastic break, recharged, and I'm hoping that you guys get to get out a bit more. I suppose we have to start in Karnataka, starting with you, Prasan. I think getting a little bit better.
Yeah, it certainly is. I think over the last few weeks, we've seen a dip in numbers, and the state's also unlocked currently. We were in full lockdown until June 5th. Since then, it's been a little bit better. And with the number of cases dipping, I think it's only getting better gradually. So hopefully it stays the same, and we can enjoy some cricket on the ground and in the stadium instead of on our TV screens.
Okay, and how about you in Maharashtra and Nagpur?
Things are getting a little better. So over here as well, you have the lockdown restrictions that have been lifted. The vaccination drive is a lot more in sync as things stand because I've gotten vaccinated with my
Oh,
first dose
brilliant.
over these past couple of weeks since the last time we had the show. So things are looking a little up, but then again, everybody's a little skeptical about the third wave that is sort of impending. So fingers crossed, and hopefully things can go back to being as normal as they can in this age.
Yeah, and the vaccines have been the route out for us. The number of people, cases is rising. I think it was about 9,000 in terms of a weekly trend. But thankfully, hospitalizations are not increasing, and I think that's down to the vaccine. So a little bit of positive news from back home, which I'm really glad to hear. But we have to, I mean, in terms of, I said, in politics, they say a week's a long time. 2 weeks in Indian cricket and not talking about it, where do we start? But there's only one place. And we've had a few days to sort of calm down because I didn't want to see the Twitter messages and the articles the day after after the World Test Championship. Prasan, I have to start with you. And what are your thoughts? Firstly, on the team selection, let's start from the beginning. Going with 2 spinners on conditions that we knew weren't going to be favourable in an English summer.
Yeah, I think in hindsight is a phrase that's very famously used by a lot of experts and fans as well. And I think in hindsight, it's easy to say that either of Jadeja or Ashwin could have been dropped. But given their contribution in terms of an all-round perspective, I think both of them were undroppable. To some extent, maybe Jadeja because they had quite a few left-handers in the top six, and obviously Ashwin was going to be a lot more effective than Jadeja. But having said that, I think Jadeja didn't need to bowl because, especially in the second innings, there wasn't a lot of runs that India had to sort of get Jadeja in the game. So I think looking back, it's easy to say that the squad wasn't selected properly, or to be very honest, I think New Zealand got their squad fixed. I mean, they had their selection bang on. But that's the thing with Indian cricket. You really can't drop Jadeja or Ashwin wherever you go. And I think given the fact
Regardless
that
of conditions, Prasan?
yeah, that's the only problem. I think unfortunately they didn't read the conditions well enough, and especially given the fact that rain was going to play a big factor, they could have probably dropped either of Jadeja or Ashwin. So I'd have probably gone with Shardul or sorry Siraj in place of Jadeja. But again, in hindsight, it's probably easy to say.
Shashwat, your thoughts on the team selection?
So in hindsight, obviously, we can say that India perhaps got it a little wrong, especially considering the kind of rain that the pitch received and the dampness that surrounded Southampton for the time the test match went on. But then again, I agree with Prasen because I don't think India ever thought about dropping either of Ashwin or Jadeja. Firstly, because they've done so well for India in the recent past, not just with the ball but also with the bat. If we remember, Ashwin scored 100 against England in the home series. Jadeja was instrumental in the Boxing Day test that we won, and he also battled it out as much as he could before suffering an injury on that tour. So apart from Jadeja's bowling, I think he was also selected for his batting. But then again, I feel that was some sort of a knee jerk, not a knee jerk reaction, but that is a kind of a chain reaction that has come about just because I don't think India is very confident in its five primary batsmen overseas at this point in time. So they are always looking for someone lower down the order to also play the role of a lower order batter and just getting some crucial runs. And once they decided to tread on that path, Ashwin and Jadeja were the best options that they had. A lot of people have said that Shardul Thakur could have done better or might have batted better, but then again, I think uh, under any circumstances, Jadeja is a much better all-rounded cricketer than Shardul Thakur. So, unless India wanted to replace Jadeja or Ashwin with Siraj, which would then have again lengthened the tail, I don't think how else they could have gone.
Yeah, I think Virat was listening to your comments about Shardul, and that might have influenced him as well. So I'm going to leave that one there. But in terms of, I mean, another toss lost, which crucial toss, but we started well with Gill and Rohit, and then the middle order. I mean, your thoughts on the first innings and the score, and because, like I said, we played out the conditions early on, but then we just couldn't continue with any sort of partnerships.
Regarding this, I had actually written an article just in the aftermath of the game where I talked about India's intent, or how Virat Kohli termed it in his press conference, lack of intent. So the problem I have had with the first innings of India's performance was that we were a little passive, and by passive I don't mean that we wanted to go off. We needed to go out there and throw our bats at everything. I feel the kind of tempo that Shubman Gill and Rohit Sharma set at the start of the innings, that could have, they did not allow any loose balls to go away. Whenever they could, they capitalized on the loose balls, and that immediately put the pressure onto the Kiwi bowlers. But once Pujara came in, Pujara started to buckle down at one end. He got stuck at one end, and even though Kohli started off very well, so there is another anomaly that I would like to explain to a lot of people. A lot of people think that Kohli batted slowly in the first innings and that he did not necessarily showcase the intent that he wanted from other batters. But I feel that Kohli actually did what he was saying he wanted other batters to do in the press conferences also. Because I'll give you a perfect example. The fourth or the fifth ball that Virat Kohli faced of Trent bowled, It was a half volley off, outside off stump, and Virat Kohli got onto the front foot and drove it through extra covers. That is the kind of intent that Virat Kohli is talking about, so that the bowler knows that the next time he over pitches is going to go away for runs. What Pujara and then subsequently Rahane did, and even Pant for a long spell in the first innings did, was that they just went into the shell a little too much. And even though you can sort of argue that that is how Pujara plays, I don't think that technique is going to suit either Ajinkya Rahane or Rishabh Pant, or let's say even Ravindra Jadeja. Because the time we started going into our shells, I think it became a lot easier for the New Zealand bowlers, and then they just kept hitting those lines and lengths, and on a surface that was on offer at the Hampshire Bowl, I think that was we just became sitting ducks basically.
And Prasen, I don't know, you probably saw the comments on Cheteshwar and his batting in both innings. Do you think on the back of what Shashwat said, do you think that was unfair criticism?
Well, I think to be very honest, you need to leave a cricketer to the style that he's comfortable with. You can't ask Pant to bat like Pujara, and you can't ask Pujara to bat like Pant. I think both of them play very specific roles in the team. Actually, to be very honest, I think you'd rather take Pujara batting out 200, 300 balls and denting the new ball, and taking India to a place of safety where they can push for a draw rather than him looking to be attacking and setting a target of sorts. So I think it was slightly unfair, but I think the other problem with the India team basically is that we don't have the bowlers who can bat after Jadeja and Ashwin, and that's primarily the reason why they couldn't fit in someone like Siraj. They probably wanted that batting from Jadeja and Ashwin more than Jadeja's bowling, I feel. So I think Vikram Rathore needs to take some time off and get these bowlers to bat in the nets longer than the batsmen, because if that happens, then that can certainly help India's cause in terms of picking the right players. And if someone like Hardik Pandya comes back into the fold with his bowling, I think it'll be very useful. But I think overall the squad selection was certainly something that was expected. Unfortunately, it didn't pay off with the way the batsmen threw their wickets away.
But to be fair, if the top six can't get you runs, should we be relying on the bowlers?
I think it's more to do with the fact that you're looking to play a fully balanced squad. If you look at New Zealand, I think, in my opinion, this is probably the best 11 they've fielded in Test cricket history. Simply because all of their bowlers can also chip in with quite a few runs, and it's always useful if you have bowlers who can chip in with runs. Obviously, when you have an off day, exactly why the World Test Championship shouldn't be a one-match affair and it should be a three-match affair. Simply because if one of your players, or in this case so many of our players didn't really have a good time on the field, especially Bumrah with the ball. Obviously no one expected him to have such an off game, but it did happen, and eventually you need to have someone as backup. So if you have bowlers who can also chip in or maybe stonewall their way by giving assistance to someone in the top order, then that certainly helps. So they obviously don't need to score 50s or 100s, but if they can get you 20s, 30s, if they can play out 80 to 100 balls, I think it's certainly a plus that any team will take, especially with the way we saw how Jamieson and Tim Southey has done it a few times. So if that's an addition that a bowler can bring to the table, then that's definitely something that can work well for the team.
Yeah, I want to talk about the bowling, but just going back to Prasan's point about Pujara, you can't ask him to change the way he plays. But in this particular Test match, Ashwat, do you think he was adding the pressure because of the extra slowness of his batting? I mean, we know runs were hard to get, but still, you needed to.
So I've done a bit of digging up. I've obviously, as Prasen would tell you, I have a certain fondness for stats, and I have gotten a few through. So just give me the opportunity to read out those stats. So I'm talking about Pujara's two impactful innings against Australia, the third and the fourth test, where he got 70 plus in both innings. So even in those two knocks, he was very circumspect at the start. He wanted to buckle down. He wanted to tire out the Australian bowlers, and then you capitalize on whatever opportunities that came his way. The difference between that innings and this innings was that Australia were only playing four primary bowlers in that game, of which Nathan Lyon and Mitchell Stark were quite a way away from their best form. So Pujara utilized that bit, and just let me tell you exactly how many runs he scored of Nathan Lyon in those two tests. Just a minute. Yes, so Pujara scored 82 runs of 195 balls against Nathan Lyon in those two tests alone. So when we are talking about how Pujara aggregated about 200 runs in those games, of which 82 came off the spinner. with New Zealand not necessarily fielding a spinner, I never really understood when Pujara thought was his moment to
Mm.
actually score runs. That is one problem that I have. Similarly, about Ajinkya Rahane, during the Boxing Day 100 that he scored, he was brilliant. He scored 112 of 223 balls, if I'm not wrong. Of those, 42 runs came of 65 Mitchell Stark deliveries, who again was not at his best. But with all five of New Zealand's bowlers bowling to a good plan, bowling to their lines and lengths, again he got stuck in a position where he didn't know where his next runs could come. And even though he got away to 49, then he just had the sudden urge to play a half-hearted stroke, because on most other occasions he would have either pulled that one in front of square or behind square with conviction. But the fact that he went in with a half-hearted effort just shows that the cluttered mindset that all of the Indian batsmen were in, and perhaps that sort of permeated throughout the team. So, although on most occasions I would agree that Pujara has a specific role and Pant has a specific role, I still feel in these conditions Pujara needs to at least rotate the strike and put
Mm.
away the bad deliveries. Let's say 3 or 4 years ago, he was very good on the cut stroke. For the past 2 or 3 years, I haven't really seen him play the cut stroke apart from Indian conditions. That was one getaway, get out of jail shot from him. Additionally, if there aren't any spinners, how does Pujara get his runs? That is the most important bit, because if Pujara is just buckling down at one end and not scoring, and if all of a sudden he gets out, then the scoreboard has not moved anywhere, and suddenly the batsman coming in next has huge pressure on him, because he also has to score and also has to tighten up. So I think that is something that the Indian team might want to look at. And in an ideal case scenario, I would want our number three to be a little more dynamic,
Mm.
considering that he can effectively set up the game from that position. But even with Pujara, I'd not mind him batting with the same kind of intent that he does in home tests. Although the conditions obviously would differ, but still in home tests, you can see him wanting to push the single, you can see him dropping the ball into gaps and then running. I want to see a little bit more of that in the England series.
Yeah, and we will have to see if any lessons are going to be learned from the way Pujara batted, the other batsmen batted in this series. Obviously, the conditions might be similar. We know what an England summer is going to be like, so it might not dry up before we start the Test series. And it is a big Test series as well against England coming up. But just sticking to the World Test Championship, Prasen, I mean, at one stage in the first innings when New Zealand were batting, I thought we were going to take a lead into our second innings. But it goes back to what you said earlier about the bowlers chipping in, I suppose, that they really supported Kane Williamson and getting across the line above our score.
Yeah, I think it's very important that that happened, because I mean, even we did see that. I mean, even a 30-run lead that they got proved to be very important later on, because if we did have like a 30 or 50-run lead extra, or maybe if we set them a target of 180, 190, that probably would have still been a little bit harder to get than the 130 odd that they eventually had to get. So I think it's very important for bowlers also to be able to contribute. I think Ishant Sharma has done that in the past. He's been there. He's sort of stonewalled his way. So I think it is certainly important, and India should really learn to get that culture into the team. It
Now, I was just going to say, is that where we missed the fourth seamer?
Sorry, I didn't
Is
hear
that where
you.
we missed the fourth seamer? Because we didn't
Yeah,
have that option, and the lower order for New Zealand came through.
Yeah, 100%. I think because obviously Jadeja wasn't as effective. I think, I mean, how much ever Jadeja has done for for the team, he certainly relies a lot more on spin than Ashwin does, because Ashwin has a lot of variations, and he sort of gets the ball to do things in the air that Jadeja can't. And as much as it hurts to say that, Jadeja probably is a more of a complete package, but that doesn't mean that he should be selected just for his batting, which I think was the case here, especially in the World Test Championship. So I think we certainly missed a fourth seamer. A fourth seamer could have probably made up for what Bumrah couldn't do with the ball. So I think it was certainly missing, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned honestly from here. We're hearing that the Indian team is looking to play Siraj in all matches in England. We don't know how true it is, but yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't really think there's anything that can be done now about it.
As you can see, we've had a comment here from Raj Sexaria. We could not blame Jadeja, blame Virat. We'll see about that, and we'll talk about that. But obviously, feelings are very strong on Virat, and we'll talk about Virat. But I just want to stick to in terms of before I come to day 6. What did you think of that late addition to a rest day? In terms of otherwise, it would have been a shared trophy, no doubt. Shashwat,
I don't.
Pardon, I couldn't get that.
what did you
The
think
last.
of having a 6th day? Changing conditions. I mean, we didn't have that in any of the World Test Championship matches prior to that, but they brought it in for the final.
No, I'm glad that they put such a provision into place for the final, because you would not have wanted to be in a situation where 100, overs have been lost to rain and the match couldn't get a result because there wasn't enough time on day 5. So I think that provision was pretty good. And reserve days as a provision have been in the ICC's mind for quite a while. You see the 2019 World Cup semi-final as well, where our game against New Zealand incidentally also went into a reserve day. So I think that provision isn't very wrong. It's just that India weren't at their best against New Zealand, and against a side of New Zealand's quality, you can't really expect to get away, irrespective of whether you play for 3 days, 4 days, 6 days, or 10 days.
But coming to that extra day, Prasan, I did not see that we would lose at the start of the morning. I didn't think we would lose. I thought we'd be in a position where we'd be setting a challengeable total and putting the Kiwis under pressure. What went wrong?
Yeah, I think. I mean, first of all, I'm absolutely not against having a draw in a test match, because I mean, eventually, if two teams are good enough to play out a draw, I think it's fine. But for such a big match, and obviously, considering that the World Test Championship Mace or whatever that is, the award was at stake. I think it was only fair that we had a reserve day. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing much that can be done. We obviously didn't anticipate a loss, but I think a lot of people did anticipate the fact that India might crumble, considering that the New Zealand seamers were anyway hyped up a fair bit before the test started, and the fact that they stuck to that four seamers plus Colin de Grandhomme only played to that very script of the New Zealand bowlers being able to bowl out the Indian team. But yeah, I mean, eventually it was all going to be a matter of how well they played the seamers, and like I said earlier, I think it all came down to the fact that they threw their wicket away. Some of the shots that we saw were pretty rash, fishing outside off stump, trying to go for the big shot, but then eventually falling. So I think a combination of multiple factors led to India crumbling off, and eventually a 130 plus target was never going to be enough.
Shashwat, your thoughts on the final day and how we did crumble, and Bunt, we thought was going to play one of those innings that's going to be memorable, but he brought us a little bit back into the game, but the rest of the batsmen just crumbled.
So I don't want to mince any words, but our batting was pretty catastrophic on the final day, because you just look at how we started off. Virat Kohli and Cheteshwar Pujara looked very, very tentative. Virat Kohli, I can't remember Virat playing that kind of a shot in the past 2 or 3 years across formats, because Virat isn't a batsman who will just fish outside off stump with his right hip in front of his left hip, him completely opened up. That isn't Virat. That isn't how he plays. So that was a huge surprise, and that sort of set the tone for what was to follow. Again, Pujara's dismissal, always, his first instinct was to leave the ball and then play at it. And as fate would have it, he wanted to leave it and then he hung his bat and then got an outside edge. Ajinkya Rahane, well, he has grown a tendency to get out in weird ways, and that is another unfortunate thing for India, that we have him at number 5 and he has showcased so many different ways of getting out. That is one problem that I have with Ajinkya Rahane, but let us not get into that. And as far as Pant is concerned, I feel Pant, when he came out to bat, he had a couple of choices in front of him. He could either have tried to survive, or he could have just tried to be a little more aggressive, come down the track, look for those reverse scoops, normal scoops, and just try to muddle with the bowler's lines and lengths. To an extent, that could have worked had Jadeja or Rahane been with him for a longer time, because then these shots would have had more of an effect. But when Pant was isolated with the likes of Ashwin, these shots didn't have the desired impact because New Zealand knew that they just had to keep chipping away at that length. They weren't under pressure to change those lengths. So I personally don't have a problem with the kind of shots Rishabh Pant played. Neither, and I would say this on record, do I have a problem with the way he got out, because that is how Rishabh Pant plays. And if he feels that attack is his best form of defense, we should give him the confidence to actually play that sort of game. And if we were to draw parallels, just a day ago, Colin de Grandhomme and Kyle Jamieson came out swinging their bats. At that point in time, New Zealand were what, 70 runs behind still, and somehow the kind of edges they got or one or two shots that they nailed that suddenly muddled with the Indian bowlers' lines and lengths. Because I remember Jadeja coming into bowl just after lunch. There were 7 or 8 overs remaining for the new ball to become due, and India were bowling with 4 or and even 5 fielders on the fence to Colin de Grandhomme. And that just, though Colin de Grandhomme didn't score a lot of runs himself, but that slight shift in mindset just told India that New Zealand were here to fight, and India handed the initiative to New Zealand, saying that yes, go ahead, you can control the game henceforth. So these little things I felt that Pant was trying to do on the final day as well. And had he gotten a little bit of support, had Jadeja not succumbed to Neil Wagner, because that was probably the second last over that he was going to bowl in that spell, India would have veered to safety and we would have at least drawn the game.
I just want to take a couple of comments and get your thoughts on this. And first one is from Deepak Belani. Bumrah is a wicket-taking bowler. We have seen him choke in the start of a series, and that has become a pattern. A bit harsh, in my opinion, Prasen, or not?
I think Shashwat would be better served to answer this because he actually wrote an article on the exact same thing. I think Raj might have read that article, but yeah, he did write an article on Bumrah choking at the start of every series and then coming back. So I think Shashwat would be better served to answer this question.
Shashwat, I think that's a little bit harsh, but obviously you're going to share with me your thoughts from the article.
I don't think it. So obviously, calling anybody a choker is harsh, and I wouldn't go as far as saying that Jasprit Bumrah is a choker. What I'll rather say is Jasprit Bumrah has a tendency to start off slow in a series. So if you want numbers, if you look at his ODI numbers, he averages 37 in the first match of a series, which is 15 runs more than what his normal average is. In Test cricket as well, his average as opposed to his usual average is higher in the first match of a Test, and the economy rate and strike rate is also higher. So because of all format cricket that Jasprit Bumrah plays, maybe he finds it a little tougher to immediately adjust to the kinds of lines and length that he needs to bowl. Though that aberration is sort of answered in the T20 format. In T20 format, you as it is have 4 overs to bowl, so it is much easier to get through 4 overs rather than bowl long spells and actually be in the game. So I feel that is something that India might want to look at. And I think Harsha Bogle also tweeted this. By the time the game veered to its conclusion, Jasprit Bumrah was perhaps looking as our most potent bowler, which again answers the fact that probably Bumrah more than Shami and Ishan needs a little bit of teething period at the start of the series, because I have no doubt that Bumrah is the best Indian bowler and perhaps is the best all format bowler in the world as well. It is just funny that he also has such an anomaly in his cupboard, and it will be interesting to see if this continues or if this takes a turn for the better in the future.
See, for me, that's a bit of a, not contradiction, but you'd think that you'd need more than 4 overs to get into your rhythm. So that he can get into his rhythm quicker in T20, whereas in a Test series.
So the thing with T20s is a lot of when we are talking about ODI cricket or Test cricket, you need to keep hitting one sort of length. With T20s, let's say he's bowling at the death. Out of the 6 balls, he's not bowling all 6 balls at the same spot. He's bowling a couple of slower deliveries, the lengths of which could vary. So he's trying different things, but that continuity, that consistency that you need, that doesn't come about, especially in the first game of the series. Because if you picture Bumrah with all his success, you'll imagine Bumrah as someone who is completely nagging away at a line and length, and then just gets a hint of movement both inwards and outwards that actually puts the batsman under pressure. So I feel that is something that perhaps explains why he doesn't struggle so much in T20s in the first match of a series. But finds it a little tough to maintain that consistency or the continuity, whatever you'd want to call it, in ODI cricket or Test cricket.
I'm just looking at some of the comments, and I want to get a bit of a big picture from you guys in terms of is the Indian team getting a lot of criticism on the back of one test, Prasan? Because I think that's unfair, personally.
100%. I definitely agree. And, I mean, it all stems from the fact that there are a lot of expectations from Indian cricket fans. And that again leads us to the question of whether the WTC, such a big match, should it be actually extended into a series? And I
Mm,
definitely think it should, because Bumrah had an off day. I mean, I understand that he might start slow in a series. He probably didn't have the best of games, but he had an off day. And if your best bowler has an off day, that can't lose your test. It can't lose your World Test Championship. You're not going to play a World Cup across 2 years and finally play one match against Pakistan where the top order gets blown away by Mohammad Amir. And then, you're like, this Indian team is worth for nothing. You can't do that. So
mm.
I definitely think that we're being very critical of what happened. Yes, I think the pressure got to the Indian team, despite the fact that there are so many veterans in that team. They did play fall shots, but let's not forget they didn't have match practice before this World Test Championship. New Zealand obviously played matches against England and came into this match, so they knew the conditions, they
And they
knew
were
what
on
to
a high
expect.
after that
England was the
England
perfect
series.
condition. Sorry.
And they were on a high after winning that England series.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think all these factors certainly add up to what happened on across those 6 days. I mean, 5 days. Probably the first day was fully washed off. But having said that, I think we're being very critical. Obviously, people might play this down to saying that these could be reasons for India's failure. But I think when you're judging a match, if it's a World Cup final, you couldn't have played 10 group stage matches before that and said, you're playing the final, you're getting no match practice before that, you're just going to be playing the IPL before. Go out there and do what you can. You can't do that. If two players, three players are having a bad day, and
Mm.
you can't lose a World Test Championship before that. So because of that, so I definitely don't think there's a lot to be critical.
No,
Yes,
yeah.
batsmen played rash shots. Bumrah was having an off day, but it's not like they didn't put in an effort. So I think people are just being too critical.
Yeah, 100% agree. Because even in all ICC tournaments, they're usually in one country. So, yeah, you have a one-off final, but you've got time to get used to the conditions in that
Yeah.
country, and sort out teething problems. Whereas this was like come and play in England, which is totally different to what it was before. A lot of people have said it should have been in Dubai, which would have favoured India maybe slightly. So yeah, I think we're being a little bit critical here. And I just wanted to know if that was generally the feeling in India, that we're being, and the media, has it been overly critical, Shashwat, in your opinion? I'll give you an example,
So
Shashwat, before, and I'll add another comment here. And I think, I don't know, Raj, but thank you for joining the show and taking part. But he's just added a comment saying Pujara plus Rahane in a playing 11 equals India loss.
oh, so
That's just an
yeah.
example.
Coming back to the thing of being critical. So personally, I felt that this was coming, and because obviously I have a lot of problems with the kind India sets up in overseas test matches, and I've been very vocal about it previously as well, because the entire indecision or the lack of conviction stems from the fact that we aren't confident enough in the five frontline batters that we are playing. And that is something that I feel we need to get more confident at, because if you remember when Virat Kohli started off as captain, both he and Ravi Shastri were very vocal that we needed to play with five out and out bowlers. Suddenly all that planning has gone awry. We don't see that anymore, and now instead we are looking for bowlers who can bat to make up our five bowler quota. So I think there is a lot that has gone on behind the scenes that has not really been great for Indian cricket in terms of the kind of selections that we've come through with. And I feel once we get a little more confidence in the five frontline batters that we are fielding, I think it will also give us the luxury of playing four out and out fast bowlers or five out and out bowlers whenever the opportunity comes by. Even
So,
though, yeah.
who have you not got confidence in the top five? Rohit? Shubman?
So as things stand, I feel that even though Ajinkya Rahane ended up as our top run scorer in the WTC cycle, I don't really feel that he fills a lot of people with confidence at this point in time, especially in home conditions. I don't think he fills anyone with a lot of confidence in home conditions. Similarly,
You just
even
hate
though
him. That's all it is.
even the Shubman Gill has enjoyed a good start in Australia. He's also gone off the boil a little, but because we had hyped him up so much, we were sort of tempted to give him one chance, and I'm perfectly fine with that because he's a youngster. He'll only learn from this experience. Rohit Sharma again in overseas conditions, despite being looking very very good and looking a lot better than he did in previous overseas tests, still has to go over that 35-40 run barrier. Even if you see in Australia, all of the innings that he played, he looked comfortable for 30-35 runs, and then suddenly he got out. When you have someone at the top of the order who's only making 35-40, then you have Pujara coming in and getting stuck in and not scoring a lot of runs, that suddenly puts a whole lot of pressure on Virat Kohli. And Virat Kohli over the past couple of years hasn't been at his best, but that is completely fine because all batters across the world, across generations have gone through that phase. There's absolutely zero problem with Virat Kohli, the batsman, going through that phase, because that is something that is completely natural. It is actually the responsibility of those around him to be a lot more proactive and to actually shoulder that kind of burden. But whenever Virat Kohli gets out in overseas tests, I don't think we have much of a chance, and that is, I think, a very crude indictment of a team that has long been considered to have one of the strongest batting lineups in the planet, on the planet.
See, again, this goes back to just my opinion that we're reading too much into a one-off test. If we just had that first test against England at home, just that one test, and just, you know, the criticism would have been unfair knowing what happened afterwards, you know, how we came back. And I think the batting lineup, when you look at it, it's pretty formidable. I mean, the conditions, I think, play a big part, obviously. But you know, to say
See,
that,
yeah, so I'll elaborate on this thing. So why I have a lot of problem with the current setup is because if you look at our last three series, or we'll consider this as another series, in proper swinging conditions or places where the ball seams regularly. You talk about South Africa, England, New Zealand, and this World Test Championship final. We won a grand total of two games out of 5 to 7, 10, 11. Out of 11 matches, we won only two games, and we've lost eight of them, drawn only one. So when we are talking about that, and if you look at all the corresponding averages, if you take the 2018 series in South Africa, Virat Kohli was simply brilliant. He was easily the best batsman on show, and that is considering that AB de Villiers, Hashim Amla, Faf du Plessis were also playing for South Africa. In their conditions, Virat Kohli was head and shoulders above the rest. But then again, he was the only batter who was performing. And the last test that we won, that was because of batting contributions from Bhuvneshwar Kumar, lower down the order, and of course a 49 that Ajinkya Rahane scored. But then again, if we are looking on someone like Bhuvneshwar Kumar to give us those crucial runs at the end, I think there is something amiss. Even in the previous series, when we traveled to England, you look at the one test that we won at Nottingham. I think Hardik Pandya won that game single-handedly for us with that one spell where he took 4 wickets, I think, and then he got the 5 a little later. And that is how the game turned. In the fifth test, we had a lot more intent. Rahul and Pant scored centuries, but then again, that seemed a one-off because of the kind of chances they took and the way they batted. You just don't get that sort of confidence. And the reason I've excluded Australia from this list is because over the past few years, I think we should not hide it anymore. Australia has been pretty good for batting, and apart from the extra bounce that is on offer, there isn't a lot of swing and seam unless it is a pink ball test where they specifically leave grass on the wicket and the pink ball does a lot more. So I feel this result was also coming, and with us embarking on a new cycle and facing prospective trips to South Africa, New Zealand, England again, I think there is a lot that needs to improve, both with regards to the personnel and the kind of cricket that we go and play in these conditions.
Prasen, thoughts? Because if we beat England in the Test series and then go to South Africa, get a 1-0 win, is everything rosy again? Because, again, I think we're still a formidable Test team. I think these batsmen are awesome. We've got incredible bench strength. Do you discard one or two of these players?
Yeah, I mean, to be very honest, I don't think we have too many backups at this stage, because if you look into the Indian domestic circuit, you can maybe find one or two batsmen who have been consistent over a period of time. And even they're probably around the same age as Kohli, Pujara, Rahane. And obviously, age doesn't need to play a role. But that said, experience obviously plays a major factor. And players, if you take them from the Ranji circuit, those who have done well for a season, and you throw them in New Zealand, England, Australia, South Africa, they're not going to do well. It's as simple as that. So I think at this stage, you need to back who you have, because obviously they've got the experience. And I have a feeling that they're going to do well in England now that they know how the conditions will play. And let's face it, I mean, obviously, you're going to back Pujara, Rahane, Kohli as long as you can. KL Rahul is there on a VIP trip. I think he just won a contest with the BCCI, and they just told him, you know what, you pack your bags, come with us. You're going to roam around in England. Probably go and do a couple of ad shoots, and that's about it. You're not going to play any cricket. But I honestly felt he should have played the Sri Lanka series, because he's anyway not he was not going to play the World Test Championship final. They had someone like Hanuma Vihari to play that exact same role that Rahane was going to play in case Rahane got injured. Pujara had Mayank Agarwal as backup, so I think KL Rahul being there wasn't going to make didn't make sense to me. But that said, I think we have people in the team. You can't look beyond these 15, 20 people and say that someone else deserves a chance. How much ever Sheldon Jackson's crying on social media saying he hasn't got a chance, he hasn't proved his worth too much. Obviously, if you hit bowlers out of the park, in the Ranji Trophy, like the way Shivam Dubey did to Praveen Tambe, that's just going to get you an IPL contract and nothing more than that. So I don't think we have too many options, to be honest. This is about the time that we get people in specific roles. The BCCI should look to nurture new talent. And if you're picking talent from the IPL, it doesn't make sense. If you're picking Avesh Khan, Prasid Krishna, who haven't done much in the domestic circuit in terms of red ball cricket, this is what's going to happen. Because if they go and play international cricket, they're not going to do well. Because if Pujara, Rahane, Pant, Kohli can't do well, I don't see anyone else doing well, to be honest.
Well, we'll see what the selection is in the first test. But just on the back of what you said and Deepak just mentioned, and I put the comment up on the screen, who would you have replaced KL with? Or who would KL replace?
I mean, unfortunately, no one can replace anyone, because, like I said, there's no one else you can look to. You don't have too many replacements. You can maybe just pick someone from the domestic circuit and say, this guy's done well here, but ultimately he's not going to get a chance to play. Maybe for all the crying Sheldon Jackson's done on Twitter, they could have probably got him in the squad and said, you know what, we're gonna give you a taste of what it is to be like in the dressing room, but you're not going to play anyway, because Rahane and Pujara are going to play. Pant is going to play, Kohli is going to play. So, you're not left with any other chance. So, but I'm saying KL Rahul could have been used for the Sri Lanka series simply because we have a T20 World Cup in the horizon. Obviously, that's this format that he's suited to. So, I feel he should have been given a go in the Sri Lanka series. Maybe he could have even led the side, because Shikhar Dhawan isn't. We discussed that, how Shikhar Dhawan shouldn't have been given the captaincy. He plays that firebrand type of cricket, which won't probably suit his captaincy. So, I think KL Rahul should have just made that Sri Lanka squad, played there, and probably come and served his quarantine, and then made the squad to England. Simply because obviously he won't feature in the first test anyway, so you might as well give him that chance to sort of get used to the conditions, maybe play a couple of sessions in the nets, and then if needed, he could have played in the subsequent tests. But I feel they wasted KL Rahul, and he should have been in Sri Lanka instead.
Well, obviously he's here and he's going to be part of the intra-squad games, and we'll see if he can make it into that first test, contrary to what you think. So we wait to see that. But one thing that's already a couple of people have commented on, and something that happens every time, just two things for you, Shashwat, is the debate over Rohit and Kohli, who should captain, back on again after this one-off loss. And we saw the contrast between Virat and Kane Williamson. Everything went right for Kane. Pretty much the fielding, the bowlers came through. He played a brilliant innings. But again, are we reading too much into everything and starting that Rohit Kohli debate again?
Well, if you look at it, as far as Test cricket is concerned, I don't think we have any sort of successor to Virat Kohli in the current team, because Rohit Sharma at this point in time is still finding his feet, has still a lot to prove in overseas conditions. Ajinkya Rahane, does he make the squad again and again? Is he a certainty as a batsman himself? The jury is still out on that. So I don't think the Kohli versus Rohit debate is especially prevalent or is actually relevant to the test team at this point in time. As far as the limited overs captaincy is concerned, well, my thoughts have been echoed quite a lot of times. So let's not get into that. But now that we are discussing Test cricket and how Virat Kohli somehow always fails to get his team over the line in crunch situations, I think I have a theory for it. I might be wrong. I might attract a lot of criticism and hate as well, but I'll still go ahead and put it out.
You're not
So I
averse to controversy on this show, so go for it.
so I feel Virat Kohli is a cricketer who likes to play on the front foot. He doesn't want to back down to anybody at any situation in the game and in any conditions. That is just how he's built, and that is what has brought him so much success. So much so that he's perhaps the greatest Indian batsman that we have ever produced across formats.
Yeah.
But the thing with his captaincy is when pressure gets up and when the stakes are as high as, let's say, the 2019 World Cup semi final or the World Test Championship final, you just sort of feel that he has a slight doubt as to whether he should continue playing in the same vein, because there has been a lot of chatter that you need to be a lot more tight in pressure situations, you need to be more compact and all of that sort. And when that slight flicker of doubt starts coming into his system, that is when he stops performing to the level that he we all know he can. And that sort of permeates through the rest of the team as well, because if you look at all our performances in these ICC finals, you look at the 2017 Champions Trophy or the 2019 World Cup semi-final or this one, you can sense that the team is a little undecided on where it wants to go with its batting. The team is a little indecisive. It lacks conviction, the kind of conviction that we have regularly shown in bilateral series. So that is why I feel Kohli as a pure batsman will be a lot more helpful for us, because then he will be only responsible for his own batting and he has enough skill to overcome that flicker of doubt and still produce performances. But when that slight bit of indecisiveness actually flows through the rest of the team, that is when the rest of the team also starts feeling the pinch. And when they see someone like Kohli, who always wants to play on the front foot, be a little tentative, that is when the rest of the team also starts feeling more pressure than the occasion would usually bring. So that is one theory that I have. That is why I feel someone like Rohit, or if you look at the past, someone like MS, what they did was they wanted their players to enjoy the occasion and just play the way that has gotten them to the finals. Obviously, Virat might still be saying it, and the message might not have gotten relayed, and we haven't seen the results yet. But still, when you're talking about finals, there is a reason why that is termed as a final, because that is the point of no return. Because at that moment, the fear of failure is at its highest, and that is when you want your top quality players, your top quality leaders to actually lead your side through and produce results. Because as much as we would want to say, finals are defined by results and are defined by the captains who win it and the batsmen or the bowlers who help you win it. Unfortunately, we have been accustomed to so much that coming second is not looked as much of an achievement, even though India was simply brilliant in the WTC cycle. But I feel as long as that blot is not removed of Virat Kohli's record, that he has not yet won a major trophy, I think those questions will keep on coming, and that is something that is simply unavoidable.
And just on the back of that, there were some comments, and again, I thought a bit harsh, but they were just basing it on the back of a couple of things. Shashwat said, "Do you think we are chokers, Prasen? Have we become that South Africa team?"
I don't think so. I mean, anyone who'd lead this side would, be very happy to captain. I mean, look at the players who we have. We probably have the best 11 on the field in every single game that India plays, and that's the reason why the stadiums get filled, because we have the best players in across the world. And I think, to be honest, if we're referring to the test format, there's no one who can come close to what Kohli has done. Especially, I was interestingly, I was having a conversation with my cousins while watching the game, and we were looking at potential captains once Kohli, has to step down or someone asks him to step down. and there's really no one you can look towards. So Pujara and Rahane are as old as Kohli is, so you can't groom them for captaincy. Shubman Gill is very, very early into his career, and he's not even cemented his spot in the side. Rohit Sharma again is very young in Test cricket in terms of the years that he's played. So there's really no one who can lead that side. And Virat Kohli has done tremendous things for the Test format. Yes, probably we were undone in New Zealand, we were undone in this World Test Championship, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a good team. Again, we had an off game. Unfortunately, it was the World Test Championship. I think if it was the first test of the 5 match series that is to come, I don't think anyone would have been as critical as they are right now. So I think the unfortunate part is players had an off day, and I don't think Kohli did much wrong because he was the second highest run scorer in the first innings, and of course even he threw his wicket away. But that doesn't have to do with his captaincy at all. I think he's someone who wears his heart on his sleeve, and that's what's needed in the Test format. You need to push your players to want to win rather than draw matches, and I think that's something that's been echoed very well by all the players in the side and not just him. So I definitely think he's not a bad Test captain. In the limited overs format, maybe there's some room for debate, but definitely not in the Test format.
Yeah, and well, we'll see that debate. We could talk about Virat on a whole show, just on his captaincy. That would be a long show indeed. But Shashwat, if there's one team I don't mind losing to, and I don't feel bad to, it is the Kiwis. I mean, they must be everybody's second favorite team, and I'm really glad they won. They obviously deserved it, but in terms of such a nation constantly getting to the latter stages of ICC tournaments, they've got to a few finals, but amazing, isn't it? And what a team as well.
Yeah, so it is very easy for us to actually forget where this current generation of new Kiwi cricketers actually started off their journey with. I I reckon it was 2013 or 2014 when they were bundled out for 45 by South Africa in South Africa. Brendan McCullum might have been the captain at that time, and this sort of process that has manifested and that has now led to this World Test Championship triumph actually started off with the 45 all out in South Africa when Vernon Philander, Dale Steyn just wreaked havoc. So for New Zealand, I think we always forget the journey that they have undertaken themselves to find themselves at such a situation where they are at the top of the world. And if you look at it on pure balance, I think New Zealand is probably one of the best test teams in the world, and that is only because of the additions of Kyle Jamieson and Devon Conway. Prior to that, you could still have felt that New Zealand are maybe a little light at the top of the order, or they might not have as many options if the wicket is not aiding them. But with Kyle Jamieson, they have a new avenue, an avenue that they can trust. And in Devon Conway, they have someone who bats positively and who scores runs, and who is the perfect foil for Tom Latham. Because at times when Tom Latham and Tom Blundell batted together, they were two cricketers who had a similar mold. Both liked to buckle down. Scoring was a little difficult, and usually you had to rely on Kane Williamson and Ross Taylor to provide the impetus. But with Devon Conway at the top, I think they have one of the more well-rounded batting units. And we also very conveniently forget the kind of contributions that Henry Nichols has had in recent times. I rate him very highly, and for me, he's one of the more underrated cricketers across the planet. So I feel that New Zealand deserved this, not just because they have been given that nice guys tag, just because they were perhaps the best test team in the world.
They
That
are,
is
but they're also
how
nice
simple.
guys.
Yes, and as Simon Dool put it, sometimes nice guys come first, but let us not get into that debate. Nevertheless, they have enough quality and they have deserved every bit of this victory.
Prasen, should New Zealand get more test matches now?
Yeah, they absolutely should. I think they've shown the world what they can do. And like I said earlier, I think, in my opinion, this is probably the best 11 they've got on the field in terms of an all round outlook. I think all players really played well, or rather stuck to the role that they were given. They have so many all rounders in that side. And if they were brave enough to drop someone like Mitchell Santner, the leading spinner, to play Colin de Grandhomme just for his hairstyle, I think they're a very, very good team.
Yeah, that is a hark back to the 70s, but fair play to him. He stands out in the cricket pitch. You can't miss him. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about the World Test. It's a one-off game, but we've spent just about 50 minutes talking about it. But I still think, getting to the final with the change in rules halfway through, the performances we had against Australia, coming back against England, I think we had a great World Test Championship in this series. It was a one-off game. I hope the ICC, I agree with you guys, I think they need to make it into 3 Test series if they're going to have the final to be
Oh,
Shashwat.
just clarifying, I am in favor of actually having one final and not a series, because I feel the dynamics of a final are very different, and that is what actually tests players a lot more. And when we are talking about, let's say, an ODI World Cup final or a T20 World Cup final, there isn't a lot of time to come back. Here you have 5 days to come back. So I feel that a one-off game has certainly has different dynamics,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'd want the format to change a little earlier. So if I were to have my way, I would probably classify these teams into 2 groups based on their test rankings, and then have those 5 teams play home and away against each other, because this format of some teams playing 3 series at home and playing just a single series away, because that doesn't make a lot of sense, even if you are just counting the percentage and not the absolute numbers, because some teams are invincible at home, as New Zealand and India have proved, but not that great away. So if in a cycle these teams suddenly have 4 away series and just 1 home series, then you won't see the best of these teams, and that is something that should not be the case. Because Australia, prior to India coming down under, they were pretty invincible at home. So Australia were guaranteed to win all their tests, but away from home, Australia has not been great. Whether you talk about their traveling to South Africa, India, England, so I want all these teams to be divided into groups and then play home and away against each other, like it happens in the UEFA Champions League group stages. And then you pick out, let's say, 4 teams or 2 teams based on how elaborate you want to keep that process. Also, there's one thing that I have given a little bit of thought to, and I'd like to suggest that away victories have a little more weightage than home victories. I
Yeah.
know the UEFA has abolished the away goals rule just yesterday,
Yeah.
but I feel this is something that could be a game changer, because the victories that we had in Australia need to be rewarded a lot more than the victories that we had against Bangladesh and South Africa at home. As simple as that.
No, you make
Because
a lot of good
because
points there.
you can't say victory against South Africa on a dust bowl in Pune is as good as a victory against Australia at the Fortress Gabba, because
Yeah.
that just doesn't make any sense. So I think that is also something that we should look into, and then again that will also prompt teams to be a lot more prepared when going away, and not just prepare for their home games and then just play to their strengths. So the overall quality will improve.
No, I agree with quite a few points there. I mean, just looking at, I think this is the schedule for the next round. We've got New Zealand, Sri Lanka, and Australia at home, so 3 wins. And then we're playing away to England, which is this autumn, South Africa and Bangladesh. So we should be in the final again in 2 years' time, looking at that
Ideally.
schedule. But in terms of your thoughts on 2 groups, I think things will have to change between us and Pakistan for that to happen, because I can't see us playing
No,
them.
you can have India and Pakistan in different groups, like they have for the Russian
Yeah,
and Ukrainian teams in the Champions League.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, a lot of good points, and yeah, I think I was convinced about a 3 Test series. Prasen convinced me, but you've just made a few points there what made me think a one-off test is not the worst idea. We have to now turn to a part of the show that we've had in the past few weeks where Shashwat has absolutely has been excelling, but Prasan and your knowledge has been incredible as well. The scores in our quiz as we play round 4 are 2-1. It's a best of 5, so Prasan, this is a final for you. The next 2 games, hopefully we'll go into the 5th one, is a final. The one I have to say that Shashwat had something to do with that one victory, slightly helping you. But I mean, we're going to stick to the IPL, and your knowledge has been incredible, both of you. And from what I've read, there's been 38 Centurions in the IPL. And obviously the obvious ones will stand out, so we'll get through that list. But the quiz for this week is to go through the list of the 38 Centurions.
We did that last time, didn't we?
We didn't do Centurions, we did dot
No,
balls.
we've done
We
Centurions,
did
because that
centuries
is
as
how
well.
the Murli Vijay thing happened.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
we do the Centurions?
Yes, yes, we
Yes.
did. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we hadn't. Have I not checked this? And have I missed? Prasan will know the week. A couple of weeks I've had. You shouldn't go on holiday really because it just puts you out of strength memory. But I did not think we did Centurions. But you're going to prove me wrong
That's
by
how that's
saying
how I got Murli Vijay's runs in in the
Because
IPL.
Murli Vijay was the last name to be out, and that's how we came to his total aggregate in the IPL.
Oh my goodness. I have to then apologize to both of you because I saw some of the names on this one and I thought, I'm pretty sure we've not done this. I need to keep a record of this. So if it's all right with you, we are going to, I'm going to give Prasan one more week then. Next week, I will have one that we can go back to because I haven't prepared anything. I've prepared this one and obviously I've done it twice. So, well, this is what happens. You should never take any time off. And this, so what we'll do instead is I just want to put some questions for you on the back of some comments, and I'll share it individually. This one's for you, Shashwat from Sanjit. Change the team, bring in the youngsters who have the younger hunger to win, like in the Gabba. Your thoughts on question from Sanjit? Comment.
So I'm not really sure about the youngsters bit, but one person that I want in the Indian Test scheme of things is Shreyas Iyer, and I have been very vocal about it, and I am going to be vocal about it today as well. So Shreyas Iyer has a pretty decent average in first class cricket. If I'm not wrong, he averages 52 or 53, and he has shown that he has the capability to last in international cricket. And Shreyas Iyer initially broke onto the scene for Mumbai, scoring tons of runs. And now that we are looking for a more slightly, if we want to tread the path of having a more dynamic option at number 3 or number 5, I want India to visit Shreyas Iyer as an option, because I don't want to think too far ahead also, but he is not a bad captaincy option in the future as well. So I'd rather want him playing all formats for India, and he certainly has the talent to do so. As far as the youngsters question is concerned, we have alarmingly gotten into a situation where we don't have a lot of red ball bench strength in as far as batting is concerned, because the Ranji Trophy has not happened for the better part of the past couple of seasons. And even this time around, the reserve batters that we are carrying, the likes of Abhimanyu Easwaran, he had a splendid season in 2018, 2019. 2019, 2020, he was pretty ordinary, but he's still gotten into the team based on his 2018-19 performances. So that sort of highlights the kind of the lack of bench strength that we have as far as batting in red ball cricket is concerned. And I think the lack of Ranji Trophy has had a lot to do with it. Plus the fact that IPL performances appeal to us a lot more, and the fact that there haven't been a lot of red ball A2s to these Sena countries, as you would want to call it. So as far as youngsters are concerned, if there are youngsters that are good enough to get into the side instantly, I'm all in for it. But then again, you'll have to see how those youngsters fit into the side. And as far as now that we are talking about youngsters, I'd not mind Shubman Gill batting in the middle order moving forward as well. And I'd want to utilize Mayank Agarwal at the top of the order, because Shubman Gill is a gifted stroke maker. He could be very similar to perform a role very similar to what BVS Lakshman did for a lot of years for us. He and Pant at numbers 5 and 6 can actually take the game away from the opposition in the blink of an eye. So I think if we are actually looking for youngsters, we should look for top order batsmen. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot in our cupboard right now. So we might be better off going towards a few cricketers who have consistently played white ball international cricket, and see if they can fit into our test plans.
Brilliant, Sanjit. I hope you're happy with that answer. One for you, Prasan. For a couple of series, can we let Virat get back to his natural game and let Rohit lead?
If he means in a test format, then absolutely not, because like I said earlier, Rohit is still finding his feet in the test format. I think he hasn't scored as heavily and converted his starts, and I think that would be something he'd want to do. And I mean, Kohli's been there for such a long time. He's taken India to the top of the rankings for so many years. Rather, he's kept India in that position, and I think he should absolutely continue and not go anywhere. As for his game, I think that will certainly come with the character that he is. He's someone who's never going to give up a fight. I think he's always looking to be a better version of himself on the field and with the bat as well. He always keeps charging up the players on the field. So I think that character is something that's needed in the test format. As for the limited overs, I have a feeling that despite all the debate that's going on, BCCI will never be happy with letting go of Kohli simply for the PR game. Obviously, Kohli is such a big commodity for Indian cricket right now, and he's done no harm. I mean, obviously, a couple of selections, a couple of ambiguous bowling selections or bowling changes, if I may, have come about. But I think the Indian team is very, very strong. It's just unfortunately the performances haven't come together. And that's been a major reason for the lack of ICC tournaments or ICC trophies, if you can put it that way. So I feel for the T20 World Cup, we certainly have a very, very good chance. Obviously, all the names we talk about come from the IPL and not from the Ranji Trophy. So I have a feeling we're going to go in with a very strong squad. And given the fact that we play the IPL before that, which is in the UAE, the T20 World Cup also was announced. It will happen in the UAE. So I think players will be well accustomed to the conditions, and we'll certainly go into that tournament as favorites.
Brilliant.
And if I can add something on those lines, so when we are talking about Virat Kohli, I think captaincy has helped Virat Kohli's batting. I think it is very important that we don't forget it, because the purple patch years that Virat Kohli had, let's say from the end of 2014 to the start of 2018, or even the end of 2018, that was all when he was captain of the side. So Virat Kohli certainly raises his performance when he is the captain of the team. But the question that we now need to answer is, what about the other 10 cricketers that take the field? Is his captaincy optimally utilizing the talent that the other 10 people have? Because he certainly can optimize his own talent when he's captain. So I think that is the call that the Indian selection committee has to make. And as things stand, I don't think, because of a lack of options and because he has been very relatively impressive in the test format, I don't think that should really be a consideration at this point in time. But yes, because in the limited overs we have a feasible option in Rohit, I think that could be a conversation that, even though the BCCI might not be ready to have now, I think we should be having.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this comment from Deepak. Kane Williamson is so humble, he can end world poverty with the correct resources. Everybody loves the Kiwis, apart from, and I'll probably come to one of you two because I don't know what this is referring to. We love New Zealand, but MS Dhoni run out will never be forgiven.
I think Martin Guptill hasn't played too many games since then, has he? He's been a part of a lot of franchises, but he's never really got too much game time.
Can anybody explain that to me?
The 2019
Yeah,
World Cup semi-final.
he ran out Dhoni in the semi-final of the 2019 World Cup, so
Right.
that was the heartbreak that no one can ever forget.
Maybe if Dhoni wasn't run out, we might not be having this Virat Kohli captaincy conversation altogether.
Raj says, you three are amazing. I think that's referring to you two more than me, but thank you for that comment, Raj. Really appreciate it. And
This is why Rahane is so not spoken about in the same light as Kohli, because Kohli gets all the credit, but Rahane is the man who really led the team to a win without Kohli there, and you're probably the Rahane here.
Oh my goodness, if you're comparing me to Rahane, I don't know how to take that at the moment.
Only in terms of his captaincy in Australia, nothing else.
Deepak,
I have no comment on that.
Deepak says we can bring in Lord Rahul Tewatia.
No.
Absolutely not. He shouldn't be anywhere close to the Indian team.
And I think Raj knows you well as well, Shashwat. Lord Shardul should be in the test team. But just on a serious point, we did miss Hardik, didn't we?
Yep, we definitely did. I think that's what we were referring to. I mean, I think if Hardik Pandya was fully fit, they would have actually benched Jadeja. Simply because obviously Hardik can bat as much as Jadeja does, or even better. And obviously he was going to be that fourth seaming option. So I think, to be very honest, Hardik Pandya is the closest answer we have to playing in overseas conditions. As early as he gets fit, both bowling and batting, I think he'll be a very, very vital addition to the side. And we'll even bat until 7 and have an extra bowler. So I think Pandya is certainly the answer to all of our issues right now.
Yeah, brilliant.
Also, if I can add something, I think another person that we dearly missed was Bhuvneshwar Kumar.
Yes.
Unfortunately, fitness has meant that he hasn't been in the test scheme of things for quite a while. But if he can get fit and if he can bowl long overs as is required in Test cricket, I think he provides us with a novel option, because I don't think there is anyone in India to rival the kind of skill set that he brings to the fore. And as other people would say, he can also bat. So I think he ticks all the boxes as long as he's fit. Plus, now that we are on the topic of Hardik Pandya, I would be very, very interested if India actually place trust in Vijay Shankar again and see if he can do something extraordinary in the red ball format, because I was just going through his records and he has a batting average of 44.84, which is not very bad considering that he has played 45 first class games. That is a pretty decent average. I've seen a lot of other Indian all rounders or batsmen getting into the team with a much lower average. The problem, though, is perhaps his bowling. He has not been bowling a lot in first class cricket, and he has a pretty high average as well. But I would not be completely averse to not testing him out, especially after we threw him into the deep end in the World Cup for no reason. I feel that the red ball format is where he is more suited to, because he's a much more technically accomplished batsman than, say, someone like a Hardik Pandya. And if the only question then remains is if he can bowl as effectively as Hardik Pandya, so that is something that he might want to concentrate on in the years to come. And I would not want India to completely cast away him as an option, because if Hardik Pandya is not bowling as has been the case over the past couple of years, we suddenly seem to have no options, and that is not a great situation to be in, especially in a country like India where we have 1 billion people. If we can't find one half decent replacement for Hardik Pandya, the all-rounder package. So I think we should start investing, and I think we should also keep aside the temptation that Hardik Pandya will ever be fit to bowl in Test cricket again. I think we should also look at other decent options. If he's fit enough to bowl and if he can perform his duties as an all-rounder, then well and good.
Yeah, absolutely. Although that when you said we've got 1 billion people, why can't we find one person? We're struggling in some sports to find 11, but
Let's not go there.
yeah, let's not go there. There's a lot of that is often quoted, but I don't agree with that 1 billion comment. But no, listen, we've had down to me, we've had 2 weeks off, but it's been amazing to catch up with you guys, and we've extended the quiz because of my holiday mood that I wasn't getting it right. So apologies for people expecting a victory or a comeback today. You'll have to wait another week before we find out what happens in the quiz. And but
Most people have already gotten accustomed to delays, especially after the past week. So I don't
well,
think this would be as much of a shock.
I've added a reserve day, so we're going to save it till next Saturday. And we're allowed these last minute changes, but a lot of things are happening, including getting used to this new system, which we're going to continue with. I think it worked. Hopefully the viewers and listeners will find it better experience. And from the comments, I think they did. So really appreciate the questions. Please join us again next week for the cricket show. We've got the football show tomorrow, and then we've got a show around the Olympics over that month or so as well coming up. So I'm looking forward to that. But for today, Prasen, Shardul, I can't thank you enough, as always, for your time and contribution. It's been amazing. Really good speaking to both of you. And hopefully this new experience was a little bit better than Zoom calls.
Yeah,
Yes,
it was fantastic. Thanks a lot for having us again.
pleasure to be part of the show. See you again
Absolutely.
next week.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. You take care and stay safe.